John Razimus here with Hoax Hunter. The Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect. A long time ago, at this point, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, someone recommended I make a video on the subject. A lot of people that watch this channel, watch my videos, they're really in sync with what's going on. And I said, oh, I'll think about it. And I didn't make it. And if you search today, YouTube, Mandela Effect, it's kind of like searching Flat Earth. There are tons of Mandela Effect videos talking about the various things. Most of them focus on, it all started with the Berenstain bears, or the Berenstain bears, or the Berenstain bears. The craziness that has caused it to become viral is possibility we're living in a parallel universe where it's called the Berenstain bears. Are we living in a parallel universe? There are books like the Montauk Project which talk about such things as parallel universes, parallel timelines, where different tiny subtle changes happen. And I thoroughly researched the Montauk Project, but I can give you one example from these books that are at least interesting concerning the Mandela Effect. Preston says he met a guy who had a roll of 50 pennies. And that's not too out of the ordinary. Anyone could collect a roll of 50 pennies. But these weren't any 50 pennies. They were 1943 pennies. And in 1943, every single penny was made out of steel. Copper couldn't be used for pennies. The U.S. Mint decided to dedicate them for bullets. They needed it for ammunition. So Preston Nichols claims he met a guy that had 50 copper 1943 pennies, which is impossible because there are only 10 or 17 of these pennies in the world. And only 10 have been traced by this auction house. They sell between $80,000 a piece to $305,000. I heard there is a millionaire trying to snatch up all of these, but to get a roll of 50 of them is literally impossible, and you could sell them for about $100,000 a pop pretty easily, it looks like. So a roll of 50 of these would easily be worth $5 million. Maybe they made a couple test stamps before they started using the steel. So that was an interesting story of him showing proof he's from a parallel timeline, this guy that Preston met. Now, I haven't read this book in many years, so I forgot who the guy was. Was it von Neumann, or, you know, he was some supposed time-space timeline jumper. But this story, believe it or not, is not 100% factual. If anything, this story isn't even 2% factual. But it's still fantastical to read. And yes, I've read every single Montauk book. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Here's a couple of the offshoots. Here's 2 more offshoots. I haven't read all the offshoots, but I have read all the ones by Preston Nichols. He talks about parallel universes with Mark Hamill. He said Mark Hamill was a musician. Maybe that's a parallel universe where Mark Hamill decided, instead of being an actor in Star Wars, decided to be a musician. So that's an interesting alternate universe timeline where that supposedly happened. Or Preston also claims Mark Hamill might have a double. Whatever the case may be, I've seen no evidence or proof of that. But the Mandela Effect, Berenstain bears, I do remember seeing that show as a kid. The first thing that comes to mind is obviously the first thing that comes to mind of everyone, which is Berenstain or Berenstain. No one calls it Berenstain. Berenstain is an unusual name, and I even took a photograph of a Berenstain Bears book. Berenstain. It's an unusual spelling. Adults are going to think it's Berenstain. Kids are going to think it. Why? Steen and Stein are very common endings of a last name. Stain is not. So you're going to jump to what you think is the most common thing out there. There are many Mandela Effect examples. The Volkswagen logo having a little cut or not having a little cut. I could see the mind bleeding and blending that cut away because it's such a fine, tiny cut. But I have no memory of the Volkswagen logo having a cut or not having a cut. It just is what it is. Google it, that's what it is. Well, this episode has found a few hoaxes. The Mandela effect is so popular right now, or was. Maybe it's a one-year-old trend, but there are enough videos on the subject that hoaxers are hoaxing, following the Secure Team 10 UFO hoaxer strategy by just faking evidence, hoaxing evidence, following the third phase of Moon Guys' strategy of just faking garbage and making fake evidence because there is none. Esoteric detective. Let's look at this guy. Esoteric detective, 100% busted. Just zoom in, you will see the extreme pixels, which don't match any of the other pixels because they've been airbrushed over in Photoshop or a similar paint program very poorly, very badly. As far as this other chart, zoom in and you can see where the cut starts. And you can see some pixels airbrushed over. It's an effect I use in Paint Shop Pro where you copy and you mirror one section and you paint over with the same color. It's very simple, very easy to do. These Photoshop jobs are very unprofessional, quickly, sloppily done as evidence of the Mandela effect. So yes, a lot of this evidence out there is fake, but a lot of it is simply people getting a tattoo from some tattoo artist that might be doing the logo based off his memory. Or perhaps the catalog wasn't done very precisely. Not everyone has a perfect memory. Not everyone is a historian. Not everyone does their extreme research when getting a logo for a tattoo. The human mind can easily forget and replace actual memories with altered realities, depending upon how old you get, depending upon if you take some mind-altering drug. Age and time can change memories very easily. In my opinion, that is the majority of the reason why people remember things that didn't happen. So no, I'm not a huge believer in the Mandela effect because personally I'm not a huge believer in parallel universes or parallel timelines. The movie Back to the Future made the whole world aware of the parallel timeline theory. It made it very popular. That theory existed before the movie, obviously, but after the movie, people started going off, especially writers, and you see it in TV shows and movies today to a great degree. Parallel timelines all over the place. I personally don't believe in parallel timelines for multiple reasons, and I'd probably best keep those reasons to myself. But one of the reasons, I'll give you one reason why I do not believe in parallel timelines or parallel universe. The show Sliders. They're trying to slide back to their timeline, their universe, and all they can find is these weird alternate versions. I do not claim to know everything. I could just tell you my opinion, and it's just not feasible. And it also creates a cop-out mentality, kind of like Elon Musk believing we are in a computer game being played by some advanced civilization, that we are a 3D holographic simulation. That's what Elon Musk actually believes. And that's not far from believing we're in parallel universes. When you start believing we're less than what we are, I think people with mental illness specifically might say, I'm going to check out of this life and maybe check into that parallel universe where I'm rich and famous and married to my favorite celebrity hero, whatever. That's the mindset I would like to avoid. That's one reason I don't believe in parallel universes or parallel timelines. It devalues the universe and the timeline you're in right now. And that's just one reason. It's my opinion. Can't prove it. But I have read and heard a lot of things concerning quantum physicists. But there's a guy who tweeted me on Twitter not too long ago. His name is Sam Twitch, or Sammy's Twitch. And he kept tweeting me about a Mandela effect of him remembering seeing the JFK assassination on TV when he was a kid. And he kept telling me, oh, the car changed. The car is different. I'm in a different universe now. He claims he was in the universe where the car had a front row and a back row, where JFK was in the back and the driver was in the front, and that he said there were no more than 4 people in the car. 2 in the front, 2 in the back. 2 rows. And he asked me, do you remember? And I was like, I wasn't even born back when JFK was tragically killed by that shooter. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm not into that stuff. I don't research JFK. I think I've seen one Discovery Channel special where they proved where the shooter did have enough time to run down from the balcony of that building. That's the extent of my expertise on the subject. Very limited, but I do remember seeing a photo, a really close-up photo, of JFK and the driver. And from that close-up angle, it creates an illusion that there are only 2 rows to the car. If you were to see a 3D side shot, you would see there are 3 rows to the car. 3 rows. It's an unusual limousine-type car, specifically for this type of thing where JFK was the president, and sadly, that open carriage convertible parade wasn't the best way to go about it. So as you're going to see these days, there's going to be a Pope-mobile situation. It's too bad JFK didn't have a Pope-mobile with bulletproof glass around that. I'm a big fan of JFK because of his want to go to the moon, and we did go to the moon. A lot of people say debunk the moon. I personally believe in the moon landing as authentic. So there's an illusion going on with the Mandela effect. It's easy to fall into the rabbit hole of believing that, am I from the universe where Mickey Mouse had suspenders? Am I from the universe where the Wendy's logo had pigtails? You know, logos change from time to time. Yes, Mickey Mouse did wear suspenders in a few rare incarnations here and there. I don't think there are any parallel universes. I don't think there are any parallel timelines. Preston B. Nichols says many times that the Nazis were trying to change the timeline to the point where they won. That's an old story being used in movie scripts over and over and over. Preston was inspired by a lot of movies. I know that to be a fact. So are we in a parallel universe? Sadly, I have to say no, because I personally believe we're in the only universe that has us. I do believe in other universes, believe it or not. I believe it was Stephen Hawking who said that other universes are bubbled off from this universe. And if you could, well, I didn't hear Hawking say this, but I had to assume if you could find that opening to that bubble, you could find a wormhole to another universe. Stuff like that I do believe is possible. So a lot of crazy Guardians of the Galaxy, comic book, quantum physics stuff with how the universe works could be in the realm of reality. I do believe there are potentially unlimited universes, but they're not parallel universes in the fact that we are not in those universes. Strictly, entities born in those universes are living in those universes, and they have nothing to do with us, other than they might be connected through a network of quantum wormholes or something like that. It'd be interesting to transport yourself to go into another universe. I've thought about that off and on, maybe just daydreaming. What are other universes like? Or even what is another galaxy's intelligent entities like, let alone the other intelligent entities in this galaxy alone? I think there are many intelligent entities populated on planets of advanced civilizations in this galaxy, the Milky Way. And I think there are intelligent, populated planets, advanced civilizations in other galaxies, in other universes. But when you start to claim that they're parallel, I think ideas are ideas and inventions are inventions, and they could be repeated forever, for infinity. So I think, as I said in a previous video where I just had a daydream, and I don't know if it was real or not, it was probably my imagination, that another advanced civilization has fast food takeout. Other advanced civilizations probably have video games. They probably have insane music. They probably have insane electric musical instruments. I think the imagination goes well beyond Star Trek. I think Star Trek can be a bit lazy when describing alien species. I'm not a huge Star Trek buff, but I do know that Most aliens in the Star Trek universe are humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, 2 eyes, because they were seeded by the original creators or spawners, DNA-wise, of those different species, and they vary based on different climates, different planets. They have to adapt different DNA splices or whatnot. Do aliens look like us? I'm going off on such a tangent. The Mandela effect is a very interesting subject. I have a case of watching a TV show twice, the same episode, and the 2 episodes were different. Believe it or not, it was an old Aqua Teen Hunger Force cartoon episode, a 15-minute show on Adult Swim, and this was many years ago. I watched the episode of the introduction of a character, which might have been on Aqua Teen Hunger Force 1-2 times. Then 1 or 2 weeks later, I watched the same episode. I knew it was a rerun. I was like, I already saw this one, but it's only 15 minutes long, and it's actually only 12 minutes long when you add the commercials. So I watched it twice. And upon the second time watching it, the storyline was different. It was the introduction of the character, and the first 5 minutes were exactly the same. But and then it spawned off on the storyline changing and dramatic changes. And I detailed the differences on my post on the Adult Swim forums. And people said they don't remember either the first or the second version. They don't remember. So I think in that case, it wasn't Mandela effect. I think perhaps I was sleepy. That show comes on like at 1 a.m. and I was tired. Maybe I was watching it while I wasn't watching it. Maybe I was playing a game. Maybe I was focused on something else. Or maybe Adult Swim has 2 copies and they accidentally played the 2 copies. 2 copies of a show happens on a regular basis. South Park. South Park creates 2 versions when it's an outcome like who's going to win, Donald or Hillary, and they'll have 2 alternate versions. Even when it's not concerning a winner of an election, they will make alternate versions. I know on Tim and Eric Awesome Show, Great Job, I was at the Muscles for Bones premiere. I was actually in the episode. You got to watch it live at an event in Hollywood, and the tickets were dirt cheap. It was like $10 or something. And it was a comedy club, and I got to see all the cast, and they showed us, I believe it was before, they showed us an episode of Tim and Eric. Awesome Show, Great Job. And it was a pre-edited version, and it was dramatically different from the final version, editing-wise. So they did have 2 versions, and I think Adult Swim accidentally played the alternate version of an episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I'm convinced it exists, as opposed to me being from or transferring back and forth between parallel universes, parallel timelines. If you have had any Mandela effect stories happen to you where you're convinced something changed, let me know, and I'll do a follow-up on this story. I thank you for watching. This has been John Razimus with Hoax Hunter. Be seeing you.